Trudeau's Liberal Canada jail a pastor for giving a speech at a blockade while celebrating actual Nazis and calling non-Nazis Nazis. Yay, Canada? Hello there, you 6.6 million Awakening Wonders on YouTube. Hello there, you 1.6 million Awakening Wonders on Rumble. Hello there, you awakening revolutionaries wherever you may be. Thank you for realizing that we are in a new epoch. Plainly, truth is coming out. Plainly, new revelations are being made. Plainly, we are at some sort of biblical apocalyptic time where pastors are put in prison by the Canadian government and neo-Nazis, well, not neo-Nazis actually, original Nazis are celebrated literally in Canadian Parliament. So, where is the truth? Where is the justice? Can you trust the system? Let's get into it. And isn't it curious how those that claim to be representing people that are suffering, the vulnerable, appear to be the most authoritarian, dictatorial, deceptive and deceitful of them all? Let's look at this story in Canada and see if it can be applied to other global situations that we're experiencing. Remember, we need you to follow us now. That's how you do it. There's the details. And if you can support us, we need your support. And I can't promise your bank account won't be frozen. I wish I could. If you're in Canada, it probably will be. Let's get into this story.
Calgary pastor Artur Pawlowski has been sentenced to 60 days in jail.
Nothing like a pastor being arrested in the middle of the road by policemen wearing masks to tell you that democracy and the system are thoroughly healthy.
For his role in protests against COVID-19 public health measures. Pawlowski was found guilty of mischief and breaching a release order.
Mischief? And that like what Bart Simpson and Dennis the Menace and adorable scamps throughout time have done.
No vulgarity, no mischief, no politics.
This is for the spirit of play, for questioning the difference between right and wrong, and for standing up for what you believe in. 20 years. This is the key, by the way.
Back in May, in connection to the demonstrations, which blocked Alberta's main Canada-U.S. border crossing at Coots. During the trial, prosecutors said Pawlowski's impassioned speech...
How dare you? How dare you use passion? This is Canada. Oh, sorry. Let me neuter that right down.
Pawlowski's impassioned speech to truckers fanned the flames of unrest and convinced them to stay longer.
We're at a curious point, aren't we, where now, a few years down the line, it seems that many of the questions around coronavirus and the way that it was handled, particularly by authoritative and, I would say, proactive or interventionist governments, is up for inquiry. Did lockdowns work? Did masks work? How effective were vaccines? These are all just questions that you might, if you're not in Canada, think about in the privacy of your own home for now. Because it looks like what the Canadians are actually looking to introduce is sort of thought crime laws. Like, don't think a boot that. Sorry for the cheap boot joke, but, you know, it is Canada, and I'm not there at the moment, so...
I always said to the government officials, leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Let me do what I'm good at, which is feeding the poor, preaching the gospel, and just being a church.
Preaching the gospel, feeding the poor, and going to church. There's that key.
You don't have to come and listen to me. However, let me do my job. And that's what I did in the past 3 years. I did my job. I am a shepherd. I stood by hurting people. I did my best. You don't have to like it.
You actually do have to like it. It's a new law. It's now the law in Canada that you have to like it. What an extraordinary situation where someone who dedicates their life to spirituality, to truth, to the exploration of meaning, to supporting a community, standing up for their own rights. And remember, we now know that on average, Canadian truckers were more vaccinated than the average Canadian population member per capita. You know, there's data on that. You know, follow the science, as they say. So we know that it's not that they were particularly anti-vaccine, they were just particularly pro-freedom. Now, one of the macro arguments we are making to you on our channel right now is that ideas around safety and convenience and security are being mobilized to shut down your liberty. That what was once regarded as the ordinary right of the average citizen is become like privacy or private belief. All these things, they're going fast. The ability to communicate, the ability to question, all of these things are being shut down radically. I'm almost glad of a situation where street preachers are being banged up in Canadian nicks 60 days that dude got, and they wanted him to have 10 months. They wanted him to have 10 months. And just bear in mind that this is taking place in the same sort of time frame as a Nazi being applauded in Parliament. You might think, oh, that was just a spurious error. No, it wasn't. They are so keen to live in a projected reality that actual reality doesn't matter. There is a conjured media maelstrom of reality, then there is actual reality. That is why we have to find a deep connection within ourselves to a kind of absolute truth, to absolute values, to absolute principles, because they ain't got any.
Back in May, Pawlowski was found guilty of mischief and breaching a release order.
I can't get past that mischief. Is it like, that's a crime now? I mean, like, when is all this laws being introduced?
We've had quite enough of your evil mischief.
Mischief, skullduggery, tomfoolery, and hijinks. 20 years.
Bart, the record of your mischief is staggering.
Prosecutors said to the court that Pawlowski's speech at the border.
I wouldn't have your hand up at that angle. If I were you when giving a speech, mate, you might get all of Parliament applauding you.
Convinced the protesters to stay longer and to, quote, hold the line.
Like I said, I should never be arrested. I should never be charged with an offense.
Martin Luther King was a preacher. Malcolm X was essentially a sort of imam. People that have strong religious conviction will apply their religious conviction to social situations because they've not been individualized, materialized, brought low, reduced, told there's no hope and there's no way, because this person's a man of God and sees spirituality as being more valuable than sort of the set of values that a culture just comes up with off the top of his head and then makes the actual law. These people like you, people like me, that have actual values, that believe in redemption, salvation, believe in change, believe in changing the system, believe in changing the self, believe in moving forward, believe in beauty and grace and truth. They are a threat. You are a threat. Your freedom is their problem. Plainly, look.
I was there in the capacity of a pastor.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Let's have a look, though, at what else is going on in Canada, just to make sure that the imprisonment of a pastor isn't some anomalous outlier. We first became interested in what was going on in Canada because, in spite of his appearances and, let's face it, lovely haircut, Justin Trudeau doesn't appear to be that interested in freedom, the rhetoric of freedom. Yes, but the sort of authoritarianism and emergency law-evoking kind of capacities of people that are more traditionally associated with tyranny. But tyranny in Canada is not always bad, even the worst example of tyranny in human history. The Nazis. Last week, the Canadian House of Commons Speaker Anthony Rota invited a 98-year-old man named Yaroslav Hunka to attend a speech by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Rota called Hunka a Canadian hero, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau cheered for Hunka alongside lawmakers. They were willing to do that just because they just didn't understand the facts and they hadn't looked into them properly. In a spiritually evolved society, the possibility of redemption and absolution for a Nazi would be something you consider. If you read, for example, Viktor Frankl's seminal work on his experiences in concentration camps, Man and His Search for Meaning, then you'd be aware that the travesty and murders and genocide of the Second World War oddly provided an opportunity for change. But that's not the culture that's being evoked or invited in Canada, a culture of like where we really try to understand reality, morality, truth, spirituality. What they want is just to mobilise and utilise particular narratives that can legitimise authoritarianism and control. You'll never see them advocating for a story where it's like, oh yes, I suppose actually we should just let people do what they want, and why don't we give people a vote on whether they want that or not, and maybe for the next, if there's going to be another lockdown, people can vote on it, and maybe we can let the truckers decide. You know, they're never going to come to those conclusions. It's always going to be, you know, that pastor, put him in prison, because that is control. Control. Bear it in mind, learn to observe, learn to watch. I know that you're doing it because I read the comments, I read the chat. I know that you're further along than me, many of you. Let's ensure that we keep doing that together, eh? In response, Rota took full responsibility for the incident and Trudeau called it deeply embarrassing. Trudeau then warned against Russian propaganda and Russian disinformation because he's just saying stuff now. Yeah, you know, we applauded some Nazis because of Russian disinformation, actually. Is it not Canadian disinformation to celebrate a Nazi? You could say that. Are you Russian? We can't keep bringing you inspiring, groundbreaking, anti-authoritarian, anti-totalitarian content like we do without our partners and sponsors. And this week, once again, we've teamed up with, you guessed it, Mule to create this limited edition Edition sticker pack. Look at these delicious stickers. There are 6 stunning designs, including this guy. They're only available in this pack, and they're all made with Sticker Mule's magic touch. Sticker Mule has 10,000 of these packs. That's right, 10,000. Ready to deliver to you absolutely free. Just go to stickermule.com/Russell and fill out the form. It's perfectly easy. stickermule.com/Russell. Fill out a form, then you're just going to have some stickers, all right? And isn't that better than where you were prior to the arrival? Yes, it is better. And this is how we're able to continue to bring you radical content that challenges the system, like we're doing right now. Get over there, stickermule.com/Russell. Fill out the form. Get on with it. Right. Trudeau's non-apology and dismissal of criticism as Russian disinformation is especially hypocritical given his repeated denunciation of the Canadian Freedom Convoy as a Nazi-linked movement. Because the truckers' grievances were legitimate, and over the years seem increasingly legitimate, and because the actions against them were pretty draconian and extreme, emergency laws, freezing bank accounts, not allowing people to fund them, throwing people in prison that gave speeches, you have to find a way to legitimise that. You have to reverse engineer it. What would make it legitimate to do that? If they were Nazis? Yeah, but they're... Oh, if they were Nazis, yeah. Anyway, we've got this guy over from Ukraine who you're all going to love. Hooray! What did he do in the war again? I don't know, but apparently he got a lot done. Hooray! About the truckers, Trudeau said, "We are seeing activity that is a threat to our democracy. It is a threat to your democracy. Your democracy is not a democracy. And it is undermining the public's trust in our institutions." Quite rightly. Trudeau, one day later, compared the truckers to Nazis and American racial segregationists. It's so disgusting, isn't it? Like, what the hell does it have to do with racial ideology, the freedom of movement, the rights for workers to unite? How is that even connected? Isn't it more likely, here's a hypothesis, that it's got nothing to do with that, and they retrospectively apply that in order to disempower that movement? What do you think's more likely, looking at the facts? Conservative Party members can stand with people who wave swastikas, he said. They can stand with people who wave the Confederate flag. I prefer to just out and out applaud Nazis. Bring them in from the cold and clap at them up in the gallery. Straight for it. Not their signs or their monikers, the Nazis themselves. It should not have to be said, but it does. Trudeau had zero evidence then, and none today, that the truckers were racist or Nazis. Zero evidence. The swastikas printed on flags at the convoy were not hate symbols. They were intended as criticism of the government's overreach for a comparison to Nazi Germany. Yet Trudeau condemned a Jewish member of parliament for being sympathetic to the convoy and for supporting people who wave swastikas. Trudeau's colleagues participated in his conspiracy theory. One Liberal MP said that truckers' honk honk slogan was a coded message for Heil Hitler. There was never any evidence for this then or now. Isn't it more likely that at a trucker protest, where there's likely to be trucks, and you're on a road and people have got horns, that it might mean honk your horn in support of the truckers? That well-established form of showing solidarity. But I suppose that's not Nazi enough, is it? So if we could just, Hail Hitler. Yes, we could undermine their entire campaign with this. And meanwhile, let's get this guy over from Ukraine. Good work. He was very busy. Apparently in the 30s and 40s, he got a lot done. As such, Trudeau was spreading disinformation. Naturally, Trudeau has for the last 3 years been accusing others of spreading disinformation and demanding that social media companies like Facebook and Twitter censor the people he disagrees with. The problem with you lot is you celebrate misinformation and you also celebrate Nazis. But what about you with that Nazi? That is Russian disinformation. Canada's political troubles may seem trivial and unimportant. The country is not a significant military power. It has fewer people than California. Its economy is the 9th in the world. California is the 4th. Trudeau has just been engaging in the usual progressive rhetoric of accusing his opponents of being Nazis, something both sides do, as the controversy over last Friday's applauding showed. But Trudeau is important, and what he's doing in Canada should terrify everyone in the Western world who cares about being free from government tyranny, censorship and disinformation. That's because Trudeau is pioneering a new way for governments to take control over the information environment, spreading disinformation and demanding censorship that is similar but different to efforts we're seeing in places like California, Australia and New Zealand. Former and current colonial powers appear to have relationships with some of the nations they helped to establish, i.e. the countries listed just then, where piloting ideas that would seem likely to engender resistance in countries like the United States or the UK, or seem more pronounced and more dangerous, appear to be able to be practiced there. Notice that during the coronavirus period, Australia set up, I think think I'm right in saying internment camps. Notice that Canada is very assertive and progressive with authoritarianism, with the disinformation being described in this article. It seems to me that because these countries, because of a shared tongue with significantly your country, the United States of America, are being used to normalise ideas and to introduce ideas that elsewise we might be reluctant to accept. Let me know if you agree with that. Let me know if you think that Canada, Australia, New Zealand, maybe even the UK to a degree, we're no longer a superpower, we're essentially ancillary to the United States of America, are being used to pilot ideas, normal ideas, so that they can become ubiquitous. Let me know in the chat and the comments if you agree with that. People across the Western world were rightly alarmed when Trudeau last year invoked for the first time in Canadian history the Emergency Measures Act and froze bank accounts of people who had simply donated to the truckers' cause. It was brazen thuggery that Trudeau justified by calling ordinary Canadians Nazis and racists. If you call someone a Nazi or a racist, whatever you do is permissible. It seems to me that's how this particular play works. Trudeau's crackdown on the Freedom Convoy protesters was followed by efforts to regulate and control the internet. His Online Streaming Act and Online News Act gave the government expansive new powers to regulate what happens and what you see online. So it's about control, isn't it? Like the online UK safety bill here in the UK. Do they want to protect you or do they want to control you? Do they want to help you or do they want to control the access to information that you receive? Just have a look and decide for yourself. You'll be able to work it out. Are there any global trends? Do there seem to be laws being passed all over the world? Does there seem to be a process of vilification, shutting down of dissent, shutting down of dissidents, vilifying people that disobey and stand up and oppose authority? You can observe all of that for yourself. You don't need me or anyone else to tell you. You let me know in the chat. The atmosphere created by Trudeau and his party is completely upending Canadian society, leading to the persecution of his detractors and limiting speech and expression. Earlier this month, a Liberal judge in Calgary sentenced a Christian pastor to 2 months in jail for what he said during a 20-minute speech to the Truckers' Freedom Convoy. The College of Psychologists of Ontario recently ordered conservative psychologist Jordan Peterson to undergo social media training because they believed his tweets and opinions were problematic. An Ontario court then upheld the college's decision. So it began in academia, it began as a cultural phenomenon, and it's ended up in the judiciary. The judiciary imposing measures on Jordan Peterson. You have the right to agree with or disagree with Jordan Peterson. You know I have a friendship with Jordan Peterson. He's my friend. And I disagree with him, as I'm sure he disagrees with me on many issues. What I don't disagree with is his right to freely communicate and essentially have a set of values that seem to me to be based in pretty thorough research. And I've had arguments with Jordan Peterson about some of the matters where I disagree with him, and it seems that that's not actually affected our friendship. But what is clear is what's going on in Canada is anything but dull. It's terrifying. In looking to defend minorities and promote culture, Trudeau's Liberals are everything they once feared. They are authoritarian, anti-democratic and illiberal. I think what happens is inept politicians that are kind of like pop star poster boy politicians that kind of look nice or sort of seem appropriate are kind of groomed and ushered through the system, and they don't actually, this is my view, my personal view, understand politics that well, and they're able to be manipulated by people who understand things a lot better than they do. And they don't notice that all of a sudden they're saying things like, I admire China, yeah, we should shut down their bank accounts, yeah, let's invoke the Emergency Act, those truckers are Nazis, because they're not grounded in the kind of ideals that, for example, that pastor is, who's like, I'm willing to get arrested for what I believe in, I'm willing to die for what I believe in. Those kind of values, even that kind of mindset, having a community that you care about, having people that you love, having values and principles that go beyond materialism, is being eroded because, well, you know why? Because we're living in sort of cellular, atomic little realities where the best we can hope for is just some sort of quick hit of purchase. We've been distracted and disconnected from God. And you have to wonder whether Jordan Peterson is a problem not because of his views on identity and identity politics, or because he has a deep reverence for meaning and passion and standing up for what you believe in. What do you think, based on what you're learning about Canada here, think is more of a threat to the Canadian system? Do you think it's like they're fretting all day, oh no, we really want to help people on their identity issues? Or do you think they want control? Because look at the legislation that's been introduced. What does it seem to be augured and directed towards? And what's happening in Canada is not separate from what's happening in the US, the UK, Europe and Brazil, but intimately connected to those nations. That's what globalism means. There is a kind of a global tide rising. There is authoritarianism, centralism. There are connections between laws in the countries just listed there that sort of don't make sense. Where are they coming from? Whose ideas are they? What happened during the pandemic? Where did those decisions get made? What happened in anomalous nations like Sweden that took a different path? Did they have a lot more deaths? Oh no, less deaths. This is extraordinary. Where do these edicts come from? If they're not grounded in data, in real verifiable facts, then it's an agenda, then it's an ideology, then it's globalism. We're going to have to leave it there. The rest of this video is equally as funny. We need you to follow us on Rumble. Click the link in the description to see this video in full, and if it's within your means. Support our community, become a member. You get access to all sorts of additional stuff. And believe me, we need to build this movement together. Without you, we're nothing. Stay free.